Okay, so you want to buy an NFL team, the most valuable sports franchises on earth, sold-out stadiums, billion-dollar TV deals, a fan base that would follow you into a burning building. Here's the strange part. The average NFL team is worth about $7.1 billion, and that team will earn you, in operating profit, roughly $137 million a year. Do that math. That's a return of about 1.9%. You could put $7 billion in a savings account and beat it. You could buy government bonds and double it, with no players, no stadium, no coach to fire, no risk. So here's the question this entire video exists to answer. If an NFL team is one of the worst-yielding businesses a billionaire can buy, why is every billionaire on Earth desperate to own one? By the end of this video, you'll know exactly where the money in professional football actually is. It isn't in tickets. It isn't in jerseys. It isn't even, really, in football. And you'll understand why the people who paid for the stadium, you, are the only ones in this story who never see a cent of it. Let's go shopping. There are 32 NFL teams. That's it. That's the entire supply, on a planet of 8 billion people. And the league has no obligation to ever make another one. At the bottom of the market, you'll find the smaller franchises, the Bengals, the Jaguars, the Saints, valued between $5 and $5.6 billion. That's the cheap end. There is no cheap end. In the middle, most of the league sits between $6 and $9 billion, and at the top, the air gets thin. The Giants, $10.1 billion, the Rams, $10.5, and the Dallas Cowboys, a team that has not appeared in a Super Bowl since 1995, are worth $13 billion. The most valuable sports franchise in human history, and they haven't won anything in 30 years. Sit with that for a second, because it's the first crack in the story. If winning drove the value, the Cowboys wouldn't be at the top. Something else is doing the work. Now, can you even buy one? Only if the other owners let you. A sale requires the approval of at least 24 of the 32 existing owners. It's not a market. It's a private club that occasionally admits a member. And here's what it costs to get in the door right now. In July 2026, the estate of Paul Allen agreed to sell the Seattle Seahawks, the reigning Super Bowl champions, for $9.612 billion. That is the highest price ever paid for an NFL team. It beat the previous record, the Washington Commanders at $6.05 billion, by nearly 60% in 3 years. Keep that number, 60% in 3 years, in your head. We're coming back to it, and it's the whole video. So let's say you've done it. 24 owners voted yes. You wired $9.6 billion. You own a football team. Now here's the bill nobody warned you about. You have to pay the players. The salary cap sits around $280 million per team, and unlike most sports, that's a floor as well as a ceiling. You don't get to be cheap. You have to pay everyone else. Coaches, coordinators, scouts, trainers, front office. A head coach alone can cost you $15 million a year, and you'll probably fire him and keep paying him. You have to run a stadium 365 days a year that gets used, for its actual purpose, about 10 times. And then there's the part that turns a business into a nightmare. Your product can be bad. Not slightly bad. Catastrophically, publicly, expensively bad. You can spend the maximum on payroll and go 3 and 14. There is no other business on earth where you can spend every available dollar, execute perfectly on the finances, and still have 80,000 people scream that you should sell the company. Average team revenue is about $687 million a year. After everything, roughly $137 million survives as operating profit on a $9.6 billion purchase. That's a payback period of about 70 years. You will be dead. Your children will be dead. So the operating business is, financially speaking, close to pointless. Which means the answer isn't here. It's somewhere else. Reveal 1. The football is not the business. Look at where the money actually comes from. Of that $687 million in average revenue, More than 400 million arrives before a single ticket is sold. It's national revenue, television money, licensing, league sponsorship, and it's split equally among all 32 teams. The NFL is in the middle of 11-year media rights deals worth $111 billion. That's about $12.4 billion a year, flowing into the league and out to the teams in 32 equal slices. So the last place team, the team that goes 2-15, that empties its stadium by November, that team gets the same $400 million check as the champion. Read that again. The NFL pays you roughly the same whether you are excellent or humiliating. Why? Because the product isn't the football, the product is attention. In 2024, NFL games accounted for 72 of the 100 most watched television broadcasts in America, not 72% of sports broadcasts, 72 of the top 100 programs, period. In a fractured, streaming, scrolling country where nothing is watched by everyone anymore, the NFL is the last thing on earth that still gathers a crowd. You are not buying a football team. You are buying a 30-second slice of the last mass audience in America, and the networks will pay anything for it. Reveal 2. You are not going to build the stadium. The single largest cost in professional sports is the building. $2 billion, $3 billion, $4 billion. And here's the trick that has run for 50 years, in plain sight. Of the 30 stadiums in the NFL, exactly 3 were built with private money. 3. SoFi in Los Angeles, MetLife in New Jersey, and Gillette in New England. The other 27 were built, in part or in whole, with public funds. More than $10.6 billion of taxpayer money sits in the concrete of the stadiums the NFL plays in today. And it is not slowing down, it is accelerating. The Buffalo Bills open a new stadium this year, roughly $2 billion, with over $800 million from the public. The Tennessee Titans are building a $2.1 billion stadium with about $1.26 billion in public funding. And because that money is borrowed over 20 years, taxpayers will pay roughly $1.1 billion in interest on top of it. And then, in December 2025, Kansas set the record. The state committed up to $1.8 billion for a new Chiefs stadium, the largest public subsidy for a sports team in American history. To fund it, officials will divert sales taxes from across an entire metropolitan area to pay back stadium debt. One economist who studies these deals put it bluntly: Kansas did every other NFL team a favor because now every owner in America can point at Kansas and say, what we're asking for isn't nearly as crazy as that. Reveal 3. The stadium isn't just free. It's an upgrade to an asset you own and the public doesn't. This is the part that most people never connect, so let's do it slowly. When the city builds you a new stadium, 3 things happen. The building generates more revenue: luxury suites, club seats, sponsorship, premium everything. That revenue lifts the franchise's valuation because a team is valued on what it earns. And in most of these deals, the team pays little or no property tax and rent that covers not much more than the light bulbs. The public buys the asset. The private owner keeps the appreciation. Look at the Chicago Bears. In 2012, worth $1.3 billion. Today, they're up more than 500%, and a large part of that recent climb is tied to a stadium project that hasn't even been built yet. The mere prospect of a new publicly assisted stadium raises the price of the team. That is the machine, not the tickets, not the jerseys, not the football. Reveal 4. So where is the money? It's in the number nobody puts on the scoreboard. Over the past 2 decades, Big 4 North American sports franchises have returned about 13.2% annually, according to an index built by Arctos Partners and the University of Michigan's Ross School. Over the past year alone, nearly 17%. That beats almost every other asset class it tracks. Remember our 1.9% operating yield? Forget it. It was never the point. The team is not a business that earns money. The team is an asset that gains value, and the operating business exists mostly to keep the asset alive while it appreciates. And the appreciation is guaranteed by scarcity. There will never be a flood of new NFL teams. 32, forever, in a country of 340 million people and a world of billionaires who all want the same thing, to be the man in the box. Now, before you conclude this is a machine that can't lose, open the disaster file. Because it can lose. It just doesn't lose the way you'd expect. The losses in this business are almost never financial. They're reputational, and they get expensive. You can be forced out. In 2018, Carolina Panthers owner Jerry Richardson sold the team after workplace misconduct allegations. In 2023, Washington's Dan Snyder, after years of scandal, congressional scrutiny, and a fan base in open revolt, sold the Commanders. Both men were pushed toward the exit by the league itself. And here is the sick joke at the center of it. Both of them made a fortune on the way out. Snyder bought Washington for $800 million in 1999. He sold it, in disgrace, for $6.05 billion. Being the most hated owner in football, was worth about $5.25 billion. You cannot lose. You can only be asked to leave, profitably. The real risk in this business isn't bankruptcy. It's the one thing owners genuinely fear, the public saying no. 86% of economists support eliminating stadium subsidies entirely. Cities have started pushing back. Illinois lawmakers watched the Kansas deal and said, explicitly, that is exactly what we should not do. If the subsidies stop, the machine gets a lot harder to run. That's the only crack in it. And so far, it is a very small crack. Because here's the machine, fully assembled. The league sells the last mass audience in America to the networks for $111 billion. That money is split 32 ways, so every owner gets rich, whether they win or lose. The city builds the stadium, so the largest cost isn't the owner's cost. The stadium raises the franchise's value, so the public's money becomes the private owner's appreciation. And because there will only ever be 32 of these things, the price only goes one direction. The players supply the product and take the injuries. The fans supply the passion and pay $200 a ticket to sit in a building they already paid for. The city supplies the billions and gets, according to virtually every economist who has ever studied it, almost nothing back. And the owner supplies the deed. But there's one more thing, and this is the tell. There is one team in the NFL that breaks the entire pattern. The Green Bay Packers are owned by their fans. More than 500,000 shareholders, a nonprofit corporation, no single owner. And here's what's remarkable about them. The Packers are fine. They win. They sell out every game. They've won championships. The team functions perfectly without a billionaire. The shares pay no dividend. They can't be sold at a profit. They give you nothing but a piece of paper and a vote. Which means Green Bay is the control group in this experiment. It proves the billionaire isn't necessary to run a football team. He's only necessary to own the appreciation. And the NFL has banned any new team from ever copying the Packers model. So let's close the ledger. You've bought your team for $9.6 billion. Scenario 1, you're bad. Terrible, in fact. Losing seasons, a half-empty stadium, a fan base that burns your jersey in the parking lot. Your revenue dips, your local sponsorships soften. You still collect roughly $400 million a year in national money. You still hold an asset in a 32-item market that historically appreciates at over 13% a year. In 10 years of being bad, your team is plausibly worth double what you paid. Scenario 2, you're good. You win. You get a new stadium, mostly on the public's dime. Revenue climbs, the valuation reprices, and a Khosla or a Harris or a private equity fund lines up to pay you a record price for the privilege of taking it off your hands. And the difference between those two futures, between a decade of glory and a decade of humiliation, is, in pure financial terms, a rounding error against the appreciation. That's the truth this whole industry is built on. The scoreboard doesn't decide who gets rich. The scoreboard is the entertainment. In 1933, Art Rooney bought the Pittsburgh Steelers for $2,500. Not $2.5 million, $2,500. Today, that franchise is worth in the billions, and his family still holds a piece of it. That's not a story about football. That's a story about what happens when you own a scarce asset for 90 years, while an entire nation pays to make it more valuable. The players play, the fans pay, the city builds it, and the owner just holds the deed. So the next time a team tells your city it needs a new stadium, that it'll bring jobs and growth and pride, remember what you're actually being asked to fund. Not a building, not a team. You're being asked to buy an asset for a billionaire and then rent it back from him at $200 a seat. And that raises a bigger question, one that goes far beyond football, because stadiums aren't the only thing the public builds and a private owner keeps. It's happening with hospitals, with housing, with water, with power. That's the next video. Subscribe, because once you see this pattern, you cannot stop seeing it.